Hello, welcome to Universal Interiors. I am Uni, and this is Pastor Tim from Christian Fellowship Church here in DL. Today, the interior that we want to address is the spiritual interior. Whether you need to awaken the spiritual side of your life to make a holistic person, or whether you just don't have any time. We just want to talk about that and pick your brain apart a little bit.
Okay.
So the first question I would like to ask is, let's talk to the person who has been hurt by the church.
Well, there are certainly a lot of those people out there. What does it mean to be hurt by the church? You know, often the church is people. And so it's really easy for us to pick up offenses. It's easy for people to have said words that wound. And I think sometimes what happens is we begin to focus, or we begin to dwell on that wounding. We begin to look inside an awful lot. And that kind of becomes the whole of our world then. And so that offense gets inside there, and when that offense gets in, it's really tough to let anything else get in. So so we need to recover from that. That's probably the biggest thing, is we need to let God come in and set us free from those woundings. So
And that is just basically a releasing, just saying, God, I'm sorry, I'm done, I've been hurt, I need to go on.
Well, sure, it's forgiveness. What happens is when we struggle with unforgiveness, basically what we do is it's like we build a wall. We build a wall of bricks around us, and we don't let anybody in. And so the problem, see, with unforgiveness is if you say something that offends me, for example, and I know that would never happen, but if, for example, something like that were to take place, you were to say something that offended me, then I begin to put up this wall and I say, you know, I'm not going to let Eunice in at all. I'm not going to let her get in and hurt me. The problem is, you might not even know it. I'm the one who is held captive by that unforgiveness. So for folks who've been hurt by the church, quite often, and again, we need to understand, the church is people. But when you've been hurt by people, in the church, out of the church, family relationships, that person who's done the wounding, oftentimes they don't even know it.
Right.
They're still sleeping at night while you're allowing this thing to fester and to build in your mind.
Right.
And so unforgiveness really holds us captive. Forgiveness sets us free. So forgiveness is really for us.
It's kind of interesting because looking at the spiritual side of things, sometimes, you know, and really I think the same thing you would say to the person who's just maybe, well, let me ask you, someone real quickly who has been busy during the week and the weekends come and it's just time. What do you say to them as far as like getting involved in church, getting involved in this maintaining the spiritual life?
Well, Jesus said in the book of Matthew, I believe it's chapter 10 and verse 39, that if we try to find our life, we're going to lose it. And for us to lose our life in Him is when we find real life. So what happens during the week? Well, what happens during the week is kids have soccer practice, kids have choir practice, we have 8 hours of work and an hour back and forth travel, and we've got lunch, and we've got all these things that we have to do, and life gets really busy, gets to be about us. At some point, life begins to revolve all around our little things. Well, Jesus said if you try to hang on to your life, then you're going to lose it. And we have a world of people who are so busy trying to hang on to every minute of their life that they've lost real life. And when we talk about real life, we're talking about peace, we're talking about joy, we're talking about fulfillment, we're talking about...
Right.
My daughter's in college, and she just told me the other day that Americans are the most structured people in all of culture, and yet we are some of the least happy people. We're busy, 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 and yet there's no joy.
Right.
So when Jesus said, if you lose yourself for my sake, part of what he's talking about is how do we give to others? How do we deal with this world as an open hand, that we're giving instead of hanging on to and grabbing, trying to grab life, trying to grab finances, trying to grab resources. How do we do that?
That's really cool because obviously you're a pastor and so you're a big advocate of church. But what you're kind of saying is your spiritual life goes beyond just your Sunday at church, and it mixes into the week, into the soccer practices. Yeah,
without a doubt. Church has nothing to do with the building that we call the church building. I have been here for almost 3 years, and I think you would attest to the fact that my message has been very much the same. Church is about taking this relationship that we have with Christ, this relationship that we have with God, and bringing it outside of these four walls. It really has to do with God first, then our relationship with people after that. It's the sign of the cross. It's really the symbol of the cross. If you look at the cross, what you see is a tall bar in the center, and that has to do with our relationship with God. And the shorter bar on the sides, a crossbar, and that's our relationship with one another. Now, if that relationship with people gets longer than our relationship with God, what we end up with is a teeter-totter, up and down, and it has to do with everything around us. If we let the relationship with God get so big and our relationship with one another gets so small, it looks a lot like a sword. That, again, is where people get hurt, is it's all about God, and we're going to wield this God sword.
So good.
So I think the balance really is find that relationship with God. Make sure that we're spending time in His presence, time in His Word, and then we carry that outside of the four walls of the quote-unquote church building.
And so you can kind of, like your ministry, I've found in my life, my ministry doesn't have a quote name to it, but I go out and I see open doors everywhere, and it's just as simple as a smile at times, just nothing but a smile. Sometimes it's, let's sit down for coffee and talk this out.
Sure. We tend to want to categorize things a lot. The word minister in the Bible, if you go back to its original context, what it means is table waiter. And so when you think of table waiting, when you think of, they're servants, they're serving one another. So for us to quote-unquote have a ministry, boy, that's nothing more than serving people.
That's so good. So cool.
So whether it's a smile or whether it's literally a glass of cold water to somebody who's working on a hot day, or a hot glass of cocoa to somebody who's working outside in the cold, that's service, that's ministry, that's serving one another.
Yeah. So you would say basically it's not a question of, sometimes it is and sometimes it's different for everyone, but to maintain your spiritual interior, you just have to basically do it.
Well, yeah, and Jesus obviously is our example throughout Scripture. We find here's as He served people, He would then go and take time and spend time away with God. So for Him to have that healthy balance, there was a time when the disciples brought a child to Jesus who needed to be healed, and they prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, and they couldn't get anything done. And Jesus said, this spirit, this thing's not going to come out except through prayer and fasting. In other words, He spent time away with God. He knew what was going on. He knew what was coming at Him, and He was able to take care of that. None of us really have a whole lot to offer until we spend time with God.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you, Pastor Tim.
Well, you're welcome, Eunice.
Do what you can do. Go to church. Take care of your spiritual world. Take care of your pastors. And thank you for watching. Have a good day.